You're welcome to my channel. We are still continuing with our topic, value added tax or VAT. And in this video, we are going to look at the supply of goods and services, the meaning of supply of goods and the meaning of supply of services. We shall start with supply of goods. Supply of goods means an arrangement where the owner parts or will part with the possession of goods. The owner takes part in the possession of goods. It includes an agreement of sale or purchase. So, supply of goods can be a sale or a purchase, irrespective of whether goods have changed hands or not. That is a supply. An arrangement where the owner parts or will part with the possession of goods and services. Then, the application of goods to own use. What does it mean? Application of goods to own use. Application to own use in relation to goods and services means applying the goods or services to personal use, including personal use by a relative or any other non-business use. That's what we call application of goods to own use. You use the goods for your personal things. For your personal use, either by you or by a relative or anything else that is outside the business. That's what we call application of goods to own use. Then supply of services. Supply of services refers to the supply of anything which is not supply of a good or money. Supply of intangible things. That's what we call supply of services. Supply of anything which is not supply of a good or money, and it includes the following. Supply of services includes the following. First is performance of services for another person. When you perform services for another person, you're supplying a service. For example, accounting, legal, architecture, designing, and other services performed by other professionals, consultants, brokers, and then agents. So supply of services includes performance of services for another person. Then it includes availing of any facility or advantage. For example, facilities for hire, halls, tents, and then gardens. Availing any facility or advantage. It is also supply of services, offering a facility at a consideration. Then correlation of any situation or refraining from the doing of anything. Correlation of any situation or refraining from the doing of anything. For example, surrender of any right to stay in or at or use or enjoy of any facility at a moment. Instead of you using maybe your house for staying in, you can decide to give it to someone else to use it. So toleration of any situation or refraining from doing of anything, it's known as supply of a service. Then provision of electrical, thermal energy, heating, gas, refrigeration, air conditioning, or water is also known as supply of a service. So this is what is under the supply of a service. Performance of service for another person, availing of any facility or advantage, toleration of any situation, provision of electrical, thermal energy, heating, gas, refrigeration or conditioning, or water. Then an exception. There is an exception to supply of services. Supply of services by an employee to an employer by the reason of employment is not supply of services for VAT purpose. If the employee is doing work for the employer because they're employed, it is not known as supply of services under VAT. So that is all about supply of goods and services. Then let's look at supply by an agent. The two types of agents, we have the independent and then the dependent agent. Agents who are dependent on the principal. These are agents whose actions or operations are detected by the principal. They are mainly commission earners. They earn a commission. If you maybe sell something, you sell something and you get money, you are supposed to earn a commission from that, from the amount of money that you made. Yeah, they earn a commission from what they sell or what they supply. So dependent agents are those agents whose actions or operations are detected by the principal and are mainly commission earners. Then we have agents who are independent of the principal. These are persons who are entrusted with supplying goods or services of another person, but whose decisions are not detected by the principal. They are supplying for another person, but they are not, their decisions are not detected by the principal, and they usually benefit through discounts, not commission. Yeah. So those are the two types of agents. Then we have what we call place of supply. Place of supply, to be within the VAT system, the supply must be made in Uganda. So that the place of supply is supposed to be Uganda. Supply is made outside Uganda or outside the scope of VAT. Yeah, and separate rules apply to determine the place of supply for goods and services. So we are going to look at the rules that apply when determining the place of goods, the place of supply for goods or services. We shall first look at the place of supply for goods. For goods, a supply of goods shall take place in Uganda if the goods are delivered or made available in Uganda by the supplier. If the goods are delivered in Uganda or they are made available in Uganda, yeah, they are known as taxable supplies for VAT purposes. But if they're delivered outside Uganda, then they're not. So a supply of goods and services shall take place in Uganda if the goods are delivered or made available in Uganda by the supplier. Then for the services, a supply of services shall take place in Uganda if the business of the supplier from which the services are supplied is in Uganda. So a taxable service, the business that supplies the service has to be in Uganda. A supply of services shall take place in Uganda if the recipient of the service is not a taxable person. And the recipient of the service is not supposed to be a taxable person for VAT purposes. Yeah. Then the services are physically performed in Uganda by the person who is in Uganda at the time of supply. Services are physically performed in Uganda by a person who is in Uganda at the time of the supply. That's what we call supply of a service. Then services are in connection with immovable property in Uganda. Supplies are intangible, they can't be seen, and they're immovable. So once the services are in connection with immovable property, it is known as supply of services for VAT purposes. Then the supplies are radio or television broadcasting services received at an address in Uganda. When the receiver is in Uganda, the receiver of the television or radio broadcasting services, that is also known as supply of a service. Then services are electronic services delivered to a person in Uganda at the time of supply. If they are delivered to a person in Uganda at the time of the supply. Then the supply is a transfer, assignment, or grant of a right to use a copyright, patent, trademark, or similar right in Uganda. Yeah, the supply of services, it has to be made in Uganda. The business that is doing it must be in Uganda. So that's the main thing about supply of a service. Yeah, let's look at imports. Imports. An import of goods takes place where the customs duty is payable or on the date on which the duty is payable. That's when the goods are considered to be imports, where the customs duty is payable or on the date on which the duty is payable. Then in another case, on the date the goods are brought into Uganda, that's when they are considered as imports. So an import takes place in two situations, where the customs duty is payable or on the date the goods are brought into Uganda. Yeah. Then we will have another definition called time of supply. Time of supply refers to the date on which the supply is deemed to have taken place. The date on which the supply is deemed to have taken place. Time of supply, when the supply was made. Yeah, then tax point, it is the point at which the transaction becomes taxable, which is at the time of delivery of the excisable goods. The time at which the transaction becomes taxable, and the transaction becomes taxable at the delivery of the excisable products. That's what we call tax point. Yeah, and different products have different tax points, as discussed below. These are different provisions for different circumstances as detailed below. Number, nature of supply, then time of supply. Yeah, so in this table we are going to look at the time of supply of different products. Yeah, nature of supply, in case of goods or services apply to own use. The time of supply is the date on which the goods or services are first applied to own use. Then in case of supply by way of gifts, in case it's a good, the date when ownership passes to the recipient. That is the time of supply. Then in case of services, the time of supply is when the performance of services is completed. Maybe if it's plaiting your hair, when they're done with plaiting hair. Yeah, that is the time of supply. The date when the performance of goods is completed. For goods, it's the date when ownership passes to the recipient. When you receive the gift in your hands, that is the time of supply. Then in case of rental agreements or periodic payments, e.g. rent, monthly billed utilities, in case of rental agreements or periodic payments. The time of supply, first is the date when the payment is due. The date when they start demanding you, sorry. Yeah, so the date when the payment is due, then the receipt of payment for each successive payment. Yeah, so the time of supply for periodic payments, first is the date when the payment is due, and then the date on which the receipt of payment is done or is made. Yeah, then in case of supply under cash basis, the time of supply is the date when one receives cash to account for output, or the date when one pays cash to account for input tax. Yes, the date when one receives cash, or the date when one pays cash to account for input tax. Then ordinary or usual supply, the time of supply, it is the invoice date when the invoice is issued, or the payment date or the delivery date. In case of an ordinary supply, the time of the supply is when the invoice is issued, or when the payment is made, or when the delivery is made. Anything that is earlier is what is considered. Yeah, the earlier of the following: the invoice date, the payment date, and then the delivery date. Then in case of import of goods, for goods where import duty is payable, time of supply is the date when the duty is payable. The time of supply for imports is when the import duty is payable. Or where the duty is not applicable, the time of supply is the date when goods enter Uganda. So in case of import of goods, the time of supply is when the import duty is payable or when the goods enter the country. Yeah, so that is the time of supply for different goods and services. Yeah, as we've seen. Yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share with your friends, and watch my next video. We shall be talking about the zero rated supplies, the exempt supplies, and then other things.